And continuing a tradition for American presidents back to Ronald Reagan, President Joe Biden, now it is his turn addressing the audience here at the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. That Allied invasion in Normandy 80 years ago today is often referred to as, quote, the beginning of the end of World War II. But beyond that, actually, it in fact was the beginning of the liberation of Europe, its territories, and eventually the end of the Holocaust. Trudy Strobel is a Holocaust survivor. She is 86 years old. Her mother was a seamstress forced to sew clothes for Hitler's army in a labor camp. And as a child, Trudy worked right alongside her. But eventually, she was able to make it here to the United States. And Natalie Morales met her at a Jewish community center in Long Beach, California. Trudy says that her mother's lessons in stitching have saved her life not once, but twice.
That's a cattle car. And all of these Jews were herded in and taken away. You see the circle of death.
Weaving her story of persecution and perseverance, Holocaust survivor Trudy Strobel hand-stitched her dark memories.
He tore my doll away from me. And as you can see, my mother, she was so afraid. And she says, "Don't cry, Trudy, don't cry."
Trudy was just 4 when a Nazi stole her precious doll. It was a gift from her father, Vasily Laboon, who was taken away for the crime of being Jewish.
It is incredible to even verbalize all of this abuse that was given to us. I was just fearful, always fear. And the most fear I had that they would take me away from my mama.
Trudy and mother Masha were packed into a cattle car in Russia.
Mach schnell, 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 that's all you heard. Dreckiger Jude, dirty Jew.
For more than 600 miles, they rode, then walked to a labor camp in Poland.
I imagine the suffering along that walk and seeing people who, if they couldn't make it, they would be shot.
Yeah, there were people falling down. They couldn't move anymore, they couldn't walk anymore. I somehow still feel like I carry all of us on my shoulders.
Trudy began sewing tapestries in midlife when the horrors she witnessed came flooding back. Unable to eat or speak, she chose a needle and thread to express what was in her mind, a life-saving skill she learned while quietly crouched at her mother's side. Masha was a seamstress, forced to sew clothes for the Nazi regime.
The bodies are ready to be burned. There was no respect because the Jew was something to trample on, you see, just like a cockroach.
The sewing became healing as Trudy slowly stitched her life back together while honoring Jewish history.
I'm just amazed at the detail. The faces, Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud.
I didn't know I could do faces, dearest.
You can do it.
She only shared her works with family and close friends, but that changed 8 years ago when she met Jody Savin and her daughter Maya.
The walls, the floors, everything is filled with these enormous tapestries, beautiful and historic. But the most shocking ones are testimonies of what she went through in the camps.
As part of her bat mitzvah studies, Maya asked to meet a Holocaust survivor. Savin, an author and filmmaker, and her daughter were in awe of her art and powerful story of survival.
For me, looking at Trudy's art, it feels like she is holding up a lens to her life. It was like this completely eye-opening experience, this like visceral Holocaust education, genocide education that I'd never had before.
Trudy was allowed to stay by her mother's side, which is very unusual because she learned at a very young age to be silent and invisible.
Oh yes, I never said a word, oh no.
Maya formed a friendship with Trudy, convincing her that her work needed to be shown, and even found the first sponsor to put the tapestries on display. Trudy has since traveled the country, sharing her story.
An American soldier comes to the door. You're free. The war is over. And my mama said, Trudy, we're going to America.
That moment of arriving in New York Harbor is forever etched into her memory.
The captain said, Statue of Liberty. Oh, You cannot imagine people crying. We were all so happy.
In 1951, Trudy and her mother settled in Chicago and began a new life.
I was 13, went to a restaurant kitchen and immediately got work. I had to mop the floors and I had to peel potatoes. I think of that time, I'm still the best potato peeler there is.
At 18, she married Hans Strobel and raised 2 sons. When I visited her home, I was surprised to see even family photos were intricate tapestries.
That is my husband and I.
Beautiful.
Made myself too pretty, you know,
You
my
look
eyes are not that
gorgeous.
big.
You look beautiful.
Yeah.
You do look like that.
Savin recently wrote Trudy's biography and is working on a documentary to preserve her story for future generations.
How are you not angry? How are you not bitter?
We cannot keep hatred because then we stay hateful all the time. The person next to you is of the same value as you are. We must respect that person. And if we all do this on earth, you know, we would never have a war. We'd all get along and we'd dance together.
Yes, we would. We would dance together.
Right.
She is such a beautiful person. Now, her art, as you saw, is truly an immersive experience. And interesting, I mean, Trudy Strobel and her husband, they were both survivors of the Holocaust. She never told anyone about what she went through, not even to her own kids, until the memories were unexpectedly triggered and they came flooding back in her late 40s. And stitching again saved her then as a child and again as an adult as she went through the trauma once again. Tony?
Well, Natalie, those stitchings have the potential to save another generation and another as well, because, you know, you and I were in the business of pictures, of video, but there's something about her art which goes way beyond being a seamstress that captures the emotion and the trauma so powerfully. It's even bigger than what you can get with a simple camera or with a pen and a pad. So I really applaud her work. Trudy Strobel, Natalie, thank you very much for bringing us that story.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tony.
And guys, I'll send it back to you in New York with a note that comes to mind as I watched that story of Trudy. American soldiers who landed here at D-Day heard stories about the Nazi concentration camps, but they thought surely they're exaggerated. It's the propaganda of war. Then they actually found those camps, liberated them, and realized it was even worse than they had heard.
Well, that's the thing, Tony. I hope we still have Natalie on the line because, you know, you think it's exaggerated, you think it can't be true. The inhumanity, hey, Natalie, the inhumanity of what people went through back then, the fact that she could take her pain and turn it into something so beautiful. I've never seen anything like that before.
So beautiful. And Gayle, she had never taken an art class in her life. As she said, she did not know that she could even draw, much less be able to do what she did with needle and thread. So truly remarkable. And she is using that gift now to educate future generations.
You know what also struck me is not only...
So glad you brought us that story, Natalie. Thanks.
Yeah, I think Natalie's point and Trudy's point about using this art as a way to unpack what you said, unpack the pain and the trauma before it unpacks you, but having the perspective of love still at the center of everything that she does. She's not advocating hate. She's not advocating hate for her oppressors or the people who hurt her and her millions of others. She's saying we all have to treat each other a different way. Love that. Natalie, thank you so much.
Lesson for us all. Thank you so much.